Hi, everybody. How you doing? Rough night last night. I had two beers, normal sized beers, normal cans of beer. I had too much to drink. Um, I probably haven't drank that much in oh, I don't know, a year. When was the? Oh, it doesn't matter anyway. So yeah, it was an exciting game, a really good. Oh, by the way, I'm talking about the Leaf game. Don't let the Maple Leaf behind Aaron fool you, and the Maple Leaf jersey over there fool you. This is Leaf Talk. And I don't know the rest of you. I'm a little hungover, both physically and emotionally. It was a draining experience. I don't know how it was for you, Aaron, but it was a great hockey game to win.
It was ours for the taking. It was an absolutely fantastic opportunity for the Leafs to finally get themselves over the hump, as it were. And unfortunately, they couldn't quite do it. So we are back at Scotiabank Arena on Saturday for Game 7.
How ironic.
Well,
Hockey night in Canada, Saturday.
I, I,
Saturday. Do you
I,
remember what day the Raptors won the championship?
it was a Saturday. I'm pretty sure.
Wasn't it?
I'm pretty sure.
I
Although
think it
here's the
was
thing,
too.
I'm surprised it took until Game 7 to finally get a Saturday night game.
They do that to the Leafs all the time.
Uh,
It is what it is, I guess. So, what'd you think? Uh, if you boiled it all down into one word, why the Leafs lost or Tampa won, whichever way you want to look at it, I'm going to boil it down to one word: mistakes.
yes, that I think is the key right there. Um, I have never been a fan of dropping the puck for someone and circling back forwards again on the power play and doing that repeatedly. And I'm sorry to Alex Kerfoot in advance for this. Kerfy, buddy,
Ah,
if you're
I
gonna
don't
drop
I
the
don't
puck,
agree with you, Aaron. Aaron, you can't it is the way they play the game, and for every time it costs him a goal, there's a lot of good that happens from that. It's puck control. They're a puck possession team. Unfortunately, the predictability, I think, is what you're talking about, and you're right about that. They've got to mask it better, and not only mask it better, they've got to message it to the teammate better.
when Kerfoot's going right and Brody's going left, and the puck just sort of hangs there. It's just
Well,
sort of like, oh well, I'll just take
timing
this.
was everything. Time was
Oh,
he was looking at Brody, and Brody was headed right for where he expected him to go, and then he did the I'm going to do the no look pass. So he did a look, and he didn't look and see that the moment he didn't look, Brody went, I'm coming this way, coming. No, I'm going to go that way. And the puck was over here instead of going this way. So,
one of the
yes.
key components of a no look pass is the look before you don't look. That's I mean,
Well,
it,
you
it
got to
looks
kind of look, right? Isn't the no look pass is actually just you masking, not looking? You're actually looking. It's like the no look shot, right? Please, you're looking.
well, and that's the thing that people forget is these guys are human. Mistakes are going to happen like that. That's just a simple crossing of wires. Unfortunately, it led to a goal in the Tampa
Oh,
Bay
on a,
lead,
on a
but
night, on a
you
night
know,
full of mistakes, the penalty killing coughed one up.
oh,
You want
yeah.
you want a chapter and verse on that one?
You, I just no, I
Sorelli,
there
the
were
two
there were
Italians got
issues.
in on that one. You noticed that, eh?
There were issues with
The
that
two
game. I
Italians
think
got
top
in
to
on it. The
bottom.
Leaf Italian and the Tampa Italian took advantage of. Mannaggia, yeah,
But as it is, it comes back to Scotiabank Arena. We've been very good there. Overtime has not necessarily been good to us, but I think the intent is to make sure that we don't actually get to overtime. Um, it They had the opportunity, and again, if they lose, there is some consolation to be taken in the fact that they
No,
lost
there
to
is
the
no
prior.
consolation. There
Hold
is no
on, Frank.
consolation.
hold on.
Zero consolation.
Okay.
No,
There
go
is
ahead.
some
Go ahead.
consolation to be taken in the fact that they lost to last year's Stanley Cup champions. There is no consolation in the fact that they lost in the first round again. Now, you see, had you let me finish.
Yeah, no. I let you finish. I just made you fight for it. And that's something the
Which is
Leafs
something
should
the
do.
Leafs are going to have to do.
I see we were thinking of the same there. It is. And they really do. And you know what? Let's be real here. Another mistake. The official didn't make a call that he's required to make, which is when a player does not have his helmet on or his, whatever appropriately, then that player must leave the ice. If that player does not leave the ice, they get a penalty. Now, not only did he not get a penalty, they scored a goal while he was breaking the rules. They know that he broke the rules, and they didn't change the call, which I find ludicrous. And I'm sure eventually, if pressed, the NHL is going to say, well, it was not really one of those things where you don't want to lose a goal over it. It's like when the hockey net one comes off the post and it looks like it went in the net, so we're going to count it, even though it doesn't really look good. By the way, who was the one with the helmet off? Oh, it was Tampa. Oh, now if the Leaf player would have been in that situation, what would have been the call then?
Yeah, see, that's
That
what you actually
damn
have to
Gretzky
wonder
high
about.
stick. Here we go again. Here we go again. This is what we're going to talk about for the rest of our lives. For you, longer. For me, shorter.
Well, I mean, let's be honest here. They may have missed that call. They also missed Killorn water skiing behind Matthews in front of the net in the overtime period. But I mean, this is nothing new. Situations like this where calls go against Toronto is absolutely nothing new. I'm going to go back 10 years for another example like this. June 7th, 2012. The Marlies lose in overtime to the Norfolk Admirals.
Uh-oh.
Mike Koska scores the goal. The goal was offside, clearly offside. The referees on the ice missed the call completely. The AHL says, and they released a statement after the fact saying, the referee missed the call. We acknowledge it was offside. It's an egregious break of the rules. It shouldn't have happened, but the result still stands.
Well, baseball does a different thing, and I'm wondering if hockey should do that. And if hockey had to do that, there wouldn't be as many bad calls, I promise you. And what it is you can protest a game.
Oh, you can play under protest. Yeah.
That's right. You can play under protest. And if your protest succeeds, you start the game over from that point. The game doesn't count. And that's what should happen in the National Hockey League. Why? Not so that the Leafs get another chance to win. I mean, they deserved a better chance to win, obviously. But to put pressure on the referees in the league to do a better job of officiating. Nothing improves officiating more than accountability for stupidity by the striped shirts. The three blind mice thing and all that kind of stuff. It's earned under these circumstances. They look like buffoons, and it's just the way it is. I mean, the guy has his strap off. He's not supposed to do that. A guy is how many holding the stick penalties have you seen Tampa get?
None. Exactly.
And how many
none.
holding the sticks have you seen? It's
lot.
not a penalty on Tampa. You can hold the Leaf stick. It's okay.
Here's the other thing that I find interesting. First 5 games of the series, and I know I sound like a tinfoil hat conspiracy theorist. Y'all can thank me for your stocks and Rio Alcan going up. But I find it interesting that in Game 6, which is a potentially series-deciding game, all of a sudden, the referees swallow the whistle.
I'm okay with swallowing the whistle if they swallowed it, but it seems like they regurgitate whenever they see a Leaf do something. Last night, there were so many times they changed the rules. A slash, okay, I get it. Put the whistle away, but why does it always get brought back up? The only penalties that Tampa got, and over this series, have been penalties they can't deny. Shooting it over the glass, you can't not call that. Like the stuff that they've had called against them is stuff that the league can't not call. They have to call it. They have no choice, because then that's over the, that's beyond the pale.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, you know what? I'm taking the side of the Leaf fans here, because I love Toronto. I love Canada. When it comes to Canadian hockey teams in the National Hockey League, I think they get jobbed regularly. Lately, it's been getting better for them. Canadian teams, for the longest time, star players wouldn't play in Canada because of the money, and wouldn't play because of the pressure. And they ended up with a couple of really good players. For the longest time, all the captains of the Canadian teams were from Sweden. They weren't even Canadian. Check, folks. Check what I'm saying. Why is that? Why is it all that time? And, now it's changed a little bit, where I think Canadian hockey players know how jobbed the Canadian teams are. And they also know that if they could actually win a championship in Canada, they would become Canadian folk heroes immediately, because of the lack of championships here. So it's acceptable in some players' minds that if they don't win the cup, it's not a big deal, because they're used to it. It's okay now. But no, I'm totally on Canada's side when it comes to the National Hockey League. I believe Gary Bettman hates the Canadian teams. I think he plots against them. I think at night he can't figure out a better way. Well, let's see. Hang on a second. Boston's playing Toronto in the playoffs on a Saturday. Toronto's the home team. Okay, let's play it in Boston time. We'll play it Saturday afternoon, because that's what Boston likes. That's the kind of stuff that I'm joking. I'm tongue in cheek, but I'd like to throw in a couple of things that make you go, what? Like, Toronto's the home team, and the National Hockey League decides to play the game in the afternoon, something that Boston's accustomed to. In other words, giving Boston an advantage. That was the series where the Leafs were ahead 4-1. They pulled that on them. Things like that, I find tip the hand. So, tongue in cheek, the National Hockey League is the greatest sports league, the best officials ever created. Ownership is amazing. Oh, and the commissioner, the very best. I don't think there's a better commissioner. How can any commissioner be as good as Gary Bettman, considering he knew nothing about hockey when he came here? He's learned so much.
I tell you, the NHL is the greatest league in the world when they're finally finished with it.
And in Game 7, if the Leafs win, we'll be all happy and forget we just said what we said. But Gary,
no, I'm
it's
still
going to
gonna
get
hate Gary
worse.
Bettman, and
It's
the
going to
referees
get
are still
worse if
garbage.
they lose, Gary. That's all I can say. Watch out, baby. I'm telling you, there's 2 or 3 people in the world that are worried about what I'm saying. Okay, maybe 1.
No, I just, everybody says, okay, when I say everybody says, I mean those people who are not particularly fans of Toronto and who believe that the Leafs get overblown as the greatest team in the league, in the center of the hockey universe, and complain about TSN, also known as the Toronto Sports Network, and the league being biased towards them. I have to remind yourself that Toronto hasn't won a championship in 67 years. It is now, if somebody was born the last time Toronto won a championship, they'd now be old enough to draw a pension. So,
Thank goodness you can't see my eyes, because I'm being cross-eyed at this point, because I'm very cross with you. In all, we're serious here. I really don't think Canadian teams historically have gotten a fair shake from the National Hockey League. And by the National Hockey League, I don't just mean Gary Bettman. Forget the personal stuff. I don't just mean the way they legislate, the way they do rules. It's something that it's just built into the system. It's been built into the system for years. The pressure to play in Canadian cities, Aaron, on average, higher or lower than in the U.S.?
I think because people constantly claim hockey as the national sport, there is more scrutiny, certainly, of players in Canadian cities in general. But we are a hockey-centric nation. That's the very
I
nature
think
of the beast.
it's a fact that
Yeah.
that as a community, as a country, which includes all the cities that play in the National Hockey League, the largest majority of Canadians drool over winning Montreal, Quebec. They care about lacrosse. They don't even have a lacrosse team. Do they care about baseball? They don't have a baseball team. Do they care about the NFL? They don't have an NFL team. They have their MLS team. They have their junior teams. Their college football teams, the CFL. They have all those, but none of them come close to the Montreal Canadiens and hockey. Let me see now. Something recently happened that establishes the magnitude of hockey in Quebec. Oh yeah, Guy Lafleur passes away, and he lies in state national. The government of Canada said this is a monumental moment. He's lying in state. That's
Well,
how important. Can you see a lacrosse player getting that kind of fete?
not necessarily. I mean, one of the other reasons is that he's also lying in state is because he was also a colonel,
Ah,
voluntary, but he does get a state funeral and a flyover because of that. So that is something else to be aware of. His volunteer military service is something that the Canadian government factors into this as well.
so
So, you
every
know,
time somebody who volunteers gets that treatment,
well, I mean,
you can back off now. You can.
to the extent that he's declared, a colonel in the military and received various awards
That's
for
a
it.
by the way comment. That's a by the way bit of information. That
Yeah,
isn't central to why he was. He was
no,
because of he played hockey, he won Stanley Cups, and he is the pride and joy of people in Quebec, rightfully so. Rightfully so. That just making my point. In Toronto, if anybody the Leafs win the Stanley Cup, if the insanity that will follow will make what happened with the Raptors look like a weekend barbecue.
I would not be anywhere near downtown Toronto on the day of the parade, or 2 days on either side of it. It's just not going to happen.
Now, let me make something clear because I love basketball. I did high school basketball years ago, and I've always been very pro basketball before it was cool to be pro basketball. And what I will say is this, that doesn't diminish the popularity of basketball, but I am talking about the reality of this being a Leaf town and the country being hockey world. And how many teams can claim what happens? Saskatchewan Rough Riders, wherever they go, their fans follow. Leafs too, but the numbers are far more. We're talking about a million total population in Saskatchewan. We're talking about a large in the in mega millions of Leaf fans. And there's millions of Leaf of different fans for the different teams. But hockey is everything to Canada right now. Um, it's changing. Basketball is becoming very popular. Soccer now with the national team doing what they're doing. Aaron, but
Most
still,
definitely. Yeah.
but still, Toronto is a Leaf town. The people say, "Oh, they love hockey in Toronto." Yeah, no, no, they love the Leafs in Toronto. And then there's a few people who go, "Oh, you know what? The AHL is pretty good."
I don't get me wrong, the
I don't,
AHL is pretty awesome. It's just nowhere near as popular as the NHL.
but
I mean, for obvious
I
reasons.
do know there's people like you who think the world of the AHL, and so do I. I think it's great. Junior hockey is awesome, but it basically the Maple Leaf big tree casts a giant ass shadow where nothing else
Yeah,
can grow in Toronto when
it's
it comes
true.
to hockey. When it comes
Yeah,
to
I mean, when it comes to something like that, the branches just choke out all the ground
yeah,
vegetation.
and
There's no way for any ground roots or grassroots teams to. You know,
So what else can we give because I think Campbell deserves he deserves a lot of credit for the way he's been playing in goal. He has not been the problem. He has done yeoman service. Even the goal that was scored in overtime wasn't really his fault.
no, he definitely deserves a lot of credit for the way that he's played. For a goalie that's never had a starting position before, being picked up as a backup in an emergency situation from Los Angeles, the way that he has played fantastically for the Maple Leafs. I cannot complain in the slightest. So, sorry, it's one of those
What?
things where you can't be upset with the guy for some of the goals that
At
are
all.
scored because he's not getting a lot of help. The overtime goal actually looked like Justin Hall knocked it into the net. I'm not gonna lie. So
Oh man, he doesn't need any enemies. Campbell has been a starter for less than 2 years. Think about that. People should think on that. When he came to Toronto, he was going to be Anderson's backup. He went in the minds of the organization. We know, obviously, after the offseason, that he became their number one goalie. And we know the team liked him. We know the fans it was growing on the fans. And the fact that Anderson was traded, I have to admit myself, I wasn't sure that Campbell had proven enough yet. But you know what? He's had his ups and downs. But knock on wood for the Leaf fans, he hasn't been even the tiniest, even for the short term, a problem for the Leafs, except for when he was pulled. But when he was pulled, it had more to do with his teammates than it did himself. And as usual, he took it personal
now,
in a
and
good way.
the difference here though is unlike previous seasons where it may have affected him more. He seems to have accepted the fact that the pulling isn't necessarily on him, right? And
He's a
that's
better goalie.
yeah,
He's
he's a
gotten
better goalie.
better.
He's in a better state mentally than he might have been previously. So he's not
Absolutely.
shouldering the entire burden.
No, he is someone that I think knows how to adjust his play. That's something that he does really well, and good for him. The defense of the Toronto Maple Leafs. The defense of the Toronto Maple Leafs, in and of itself, it has depth. The good news, all right, if the Leafs can win this next game, and this is the good news. The good news is they have the depth on defense where they can pack. They can pack Hall in and say, you know what, you need to sit down for a little while, and get some energy, and then they can bring Liljegren in. And we still have a young man who's a pretty good defenseman who was higher on the totem pole than Liljegren, who's waiting to heal up and join the team. Depending on if they can win this, who they play next, it's all I'm saying is that the Leafs can win this game. I think they can win it. The fact that that goaltender in Tampa doesn't lose after losing, but he does tend to lose after winning. So that's good news for the Leafs, right? He loses.
Well, if the pattern continues, if the well-established pattern so far has continued,
Absolutely.
The Leafs will lose on Saturday. I mean, we understand that because it's a Game 7 at home. So why not
No,
disappoint them?
I'm not
No,
assuming they're. I'm
I'm
not
kidding.
assuming. I hope so.
I'm kidding, Frank.
Because we just had our one viewer have a heart attack, and now we have no viewers.
No, but I think the last time the Leafs won on a Saturday was actually to take out a team on their way to the semifinals. So it's been ages since we've actually played a deciding Game 7 on a. I think so, yeah. But it's been ages since we've actually played a deciding Game 7 on a Saturday.
Orshevsky.
That would be the one, Nick the Stick.
Yeah, great game. Todd Gill was on that team.
So I was looking at the Leafs lineup from practices today. Looks like on defense they had Riley and Lyubushkin, Muzzin and Brody, and Giordano and Hall. Now I know Sandin is still on the injured list, as well as Mrazek. I'm not sure exactly what's going on with Liljegren at this point.
Did we see? Did I miss something that he looked flagrantly terrible?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure why he's been held out of the lineup. I've been looking around to try to see if there's any comments from Keefe or any of the other coaching staff about it, but so far have found nada. So as to why he's not playing, there may be something else going on, but I'm not sure exactly why he's been held out of the lineup so far.
How about I'll offer a reason that's only spitballing. Okay, I have no information. I just have dumb ideas that roll around in that pea brain of mine. And you know when Hall was set aside, and you notice how long he was set aside? It's like, the coach said, "Nah, you know what? It's not working with me. You need to sit down." And I think Chateau Bow Wow has a minimum staying period for the coach. It's not a game. It's not 2 games. It's as many as 3, 4, and maybe 5 games where if you get to the point where the coach is dissatisfied with the way you're playing, he will teach you a lesson. And by teach you a lesson, I mean the only thing that coaches can do that carries any weight, that makes players notice, is ice time. And should I say, the lack thereof.
Yeah, I just I'm not sure if some players have a particularly short shelf life when it comes to Keefe. I know that he leans heavily on Hall, despite his defensive warts, because he won a Calder Cup with him back in 2018. But this is just, at this point, continuing to play Hall and keeping Liljegren out of the lineup is borderline insane to me.
Well, you know that he's not afraid to make you sit.
Yep.
Keith is not one of these coaches that doesn't that worries about what people think.
No,
He's not
he
one of
very
those
much marches
guys.
to the beat of
He's
his own drummer.
he's not one of those guys because he's the guy who says, Nylander, I'm going to move you down to the 4th line. I don't like the way you're playing. So you're going to the 4th line. But wait, I'm a start. No, you're going to the 4th line. And you're going to stay there until you show me that you're going to change what you're doing that I don't like. And we know what it is that the coach doesn't like because most people don't like, what Nylander does sometimes. It's his lack of intensity. It's his lack of attention to detail defensively. His inability to end a shift in a hurry, give the player that he's asking to relieve him to have as much time as possible to set up in the defensive zone, that kind of thing. It's basically an attitude thing. But they used to say, and in defense of Nylander, because I've grown to like him because he does eventually show up. And he needs to show up again. They talk about big players who look like they're not trying. He's not a big player. He looks like he's not trying, but I think he has this attitude, right? I think he's more concerned sometimes with the flow of his hair. And he's distracted by what it looks like he's doing. His grasp on reality isn't always 100%. As proof, I will say that he sat in a press conference and somebody told him, "Congratulations on getting your 30th goal." He goes, "Didn't I get that already?"
You can hear the breeze humming through his head at that point.
But Dubas explains Nylander perfectly, and folks, it's the truth. Nylander is frustrating, and as Dubas says, and he's right, he's frustrating as heck, and then he turns around and does something no one else in the world can do.
Yeah.
And
all of a
that's
sudden it's like
frustration, right? Isn't that the top of problem here? That's the number one for Leaf fans and for people who understand the game and watch the game and see him and what he's capable of doing, and then he does the other, right? But he's been more good than bad in this playoff series, right?
No, he certainly has. I mean, and like last year when he was one of the only Leafs that was actually scoring, here he's part of a more balanced attack. Tavares had a breakout game with 2 goals. Marner's been consistent. You know, the big players that they need to score goals, with the exception of Matthews, who puzzlingly has gone dry since the first game at least. You know, they're at least they're starting to contribute a little bit more, and this is important. I know you mentioned last time that the only time I think you mentioned the only time that Nylander plays well is when the Leafs are playing like ass. Pardon my French, but you know this.
It seems to be true, though, doesn't it?
That's the worst part. Is I am afraid you're right.
It's and you know it's because he gets center stage. I think, this is my chance to be the best player on the team. And it's not something I don't think it's conscious. I think it's subconscious. I think basically it's a personality trait, which it doesn't matter. It doesn't the personality trait. It doesn't make him less or more of a person. It's just it's like, okay, he has red hair. You know what I mean? That's how important that is. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's a personal way that he is. That's why you have people called coaches. That's why you have people called, and these ones are really important, people called teammates. They're supposed to hold each other up. And that's something that this Leaf team does. We've heard almost ad nauseum that number 19 made a speech, Spezza, and what a hero he is. He is another Winston. Come on. Okay. You know how I feel about him. We both love and adore the guy. What he does for what he gets paid is ridiculous. They get their money's worth from him. Don't get me wrong. But really what matters is what the players do, when they hear the message. And sometimes, the messenger, if you change the messenger, the same message actually lands, as opposed to, because the coach can only be a Richard so often, right? Eventually you got to find another Richard, that tells it like it is. But the new Richard says it in a way that the other guys haven't heard it, so it doesn't seem like he's a Richard. It just seems like he's a guy who cares, right? The
No,
other
yeah,
guy cares
exactly.
too much. The other guy cares too much.
I mean, you can only do things a certain number of times before people sort of get acclimatized to it, right? And that's when they say coaches tend to lose the room. As long as you find new ways to convey the message, then it is possible for the players to at least partially tune out a coach. As long as the same message is coming from the captain or the assistant captain or a designated leader in the room, the message will get through and things eventually will get done. But it's a tough thing to do. There has to be a certain amount of balance there. There's a certain amount of carrot and stick that goes around with anything that the coach does and says. So,
yeah, like I said, ice time.
Yep.
Reborn, ascension, savior. I'm referring to the captain. Is he back? Is this going to be a trend? Can they count on him to carry the load? Do the Leafs need him to play the way he's played the last game or two?
I'm convinced that John Tavares will eventually get rolling if you give him enough games. He had a slow start to the season as well, and everybody was worried about him before he finally caught fire. So the fact that he wasn't removed from a game by an errant knee, ironically enough, that same guy that took him out against Montreal is now playing for Tampa Bay. It's a possibility. They will need all of their players contributing. That's the major thing, is they need everybody to be kicking in. So, yeah, he's going to have to keep playing the way that he's been playing in order to make sure that everything works.
Morgan Riley's looked good.
It's looked fantastic and worth every single penny of his extension.
On defense as well, I think number 8's look good too.
Muzzin, coming back from injury, yeah, he's looked rock steady.
He does have his furball moments.
Well, I mean, everybody gets a little bit of cranial vapor lock. Let's be honest here.
He's but yeah, he doesn't. A couple of hairballs.
He doesn't cough it up as much as number 3 does.
Yeah, but they're players. They're human. They're going to make mistakes. But here's really, to summarize the mistake part of this is that every mistake the Leafs made last night ended up in the back of the net. And how often does that happen? I mean, in defense of the Maple Leafs, they made mistakes. I mean, when Tampa made mistakes, last night, the Leafs didn't score. I should say, no, that's not true. They did. They didn't capitalize enough on the Tampa Bay mistakes, whereas Tampa Bay did. And they're full value for the victory. I don't want to demean anything that Tampa's done. They just don't deserve to win another Stanley Cup. They should, you know, they should literally give up this next game and just say, we're not coming to Toronto. We've had enough. Our 2 cups are great. No,
Uh,
no,
I
doesn't
I
fly.
I can tell you're trying very hard to keep a straight face there, Frank, and it's a good thing you've got the sunglasses on to hide the wrinkles around your eyes when you're chuckling internally. Um, I mean, we all know that Tampa Bay is going to try for a three-peat. It is what they do.
It's
That
only the
team,
first round.
and that team is built for the playoffs. Let's be honest. I mean, sure, they may have had their struggles in getting in and closing out the season and what have you, but this team is built to go in the playoffs. So we're seeing that.
What do the Leafs have to do to be the team that's built to go? I'm going to sit back here and I want to hear from you. I want to hear
They're
your
going to have to
conversation
beat the
on
Tampa Bay Lightning in the dressing room with a lead pipe before the game to make sure that they can win.
and if
No,
that
I
doesn't
mean,
work, a candlestick.
well, that in the library.
I prefer in the kitchen because that's a Conn Smythe term, right? If you can't beat them in the alley, then you have to beat them. No, if you can't beat them in the kitchen, you got to beat them in the alley. Yeah. The other important factors before the game tomorrow that I think we should talk about as well is the fact that this whole show hinges on the balance of them winning. I mean, it's over for Leaf Talk if they don't win tomorrow, except for Monday. We can review and mourn the loss if it's a loss. But I'm looking forward more to looking at the next opponent. I'm looking forward to talking about how Matthews wins it for the Leafs. And, basically, I really look forward to the captain having one of his best games as a Maple Leaf.
That is, something that we're all hoping for. Obviously, at this point, we're hoping that the jam jams. We're hoping the jelly gels. We're hoping that the cake doesn't fall.
And then there's Nylander. They've got guys that can make it happen. I mean, and we haven't even talked about Marner. The water bug on the pond. The guy, you can't hit him. And don't tell me that they're not trying to, because there were a couple of times where they got a piece of Marner, but a very small, tiny piece.
Well, he's actually started to hit a few people as well.
Yes,
I've
he's
noticed.
getting a little, and that's good. He's getting a little miffed.
Yeah, and he's been using his body to separate opposition players from the puck, which is all that you can ever ask of him, right? That is just, it's awesome to see. Matthews is throwing the body around a little bit more. He's finally playing like his foot
led the
3,
team in
205.
Led team in hits.
Yeah. And it's obviously a concern when a player like that is leading your team in hits, because technically speaking, the Maple Leafs are supposed to be a possession team.
No, but you can be a possession team, I should say, possessive possession, and also remove bodies from the puck. Why not? I mean, I love the way he's trying to hit, the way Austin Matthews is trying to hit. You can see that he's new to it, right? He's made a couple of attempts, right, that weren't big hits, but that's okay. He needs to try to make the hits and not throw himself into the hit, because he needs to be able to survive his own. Because making contact is great, but if you don't make the contact you're intending to make, that's the danger of Matthews going after the hits, right?
Well, I'm hoping that he finally does learn how to hit correctly, meaning
He's
not
learning.
jumping,
He's
leading
learning.
low,
Like
that
what
sort
he's
of thing.
doing.
And I'm hoping he develops a taste for it.
Oh, he does. He has
So-
a taste for it. You look at when he makes those hits and he turns around and he goes, "Did you get my number? Did you get my number? Come on, tell me you got my number. No, you didn't get my number. 34. just in case you missed it. Yeah, no, I like the way he's playing, and I like the way this Leaf team is playing. They looked really good last night. They just weren't good enough, and enjoyable to watch once all the kidding aside and all the terrible stuff. Just imagine, think about this, and I speak to Leaf fans, I speak to you, and I speak to myself as a hockey fan. That's the kind of hockey we wait for in the playoffs. It's not the fights, it's not the after whistle tussles. It's the intensity, the desire to win. And now it isn't a question of A team has the desire and B team doesn't. It's which team has more desire. So we saw a Leaf team with a lot of desire. It just didn't work out for them.
Yeah, sometimes you just end up on the short end of the stick, and it's not anything to do with ability because both teams are incredibly talented. It's that word that statistic folks hate, intangibles.
Absolutely.
So,
Coaching. How would you rate the coaching thus far?
there have been some occasions where Keefe has found himself scrambling to catch up with Cooper. Yeah, that is nowhere more evident than in the loss in Tampa Bay. He just plain got out coached and out line matched by Cooper. He was able to adapt better and use that to his advantage. I don't necessarily think it's that the Leafs. I know I said that they kind of hey, we got the split in Tampa, we're good. It's not necessarily that, but it's one of those cases where there were subtle changes that Cooper made to the way the defense was structured, I think, at points in the game that also affected the Leafs' ability to penetrate the zone. There was a lot more dump and not as much chase on the Leafs side of it, mainly because Tampa was very good at moving the puck up the boards and getting it back out again. So there's that to consider as well. But we'll have to see if Keefe is able to take a look at game tape and figure out where Cooper pulled the wool over his eyes and managed to fool him. And we'll see if he can adapt to that and get better.
You're right about that game. And the thing that he did, I don't know whether you call this out coaching or whatever, but when he had the no practice and just show up at the game, that was probably Tampa's best game. I'm wondering if he'll pull that one again. Just show up and no practice.
Well, I mean, at this point, you've already played 87, 88 games.
And you're on
if
your
you guys don't know how to
with
get ready for a game, at this point, there's nothing else I can do. There's only so many drills I can run.
But the Leafs are running their practices.
Well, that's
what I mean when I say if the Leafs can win this game, then Cooper's plan didn't work. If he sits his guys and says we'll just start the game, but I think the Leafs should do that too. I truly believe that there's no more to learn for the Maple Leafs in beating their opponent, this particular opponent, because they played 6 times. If they don't know what what the negatives are and can't figure out what positives they need to add to the game personally, individually, as a group, a line, a pairing, then they're not going to win anyway, because you're right. I mean, the practice thing, the best it does is it helps get rid of the nerves, I guess. But in some cases, you create nerves by having the practice. I think that's what Cooper did, and that's what he was saying. And I wonder how right he is about that.
Well, I mean, if you have a particularly bad practice, like if you're missing passes, you're not making a lot of saves, or you're blowing plays and missing assignments on stuff that normally you click with, then that can cause a certain amount of anxiety and trepidation. If I screw it up in practice, what are the odds that I'm actually going to screw it up during the game? So in some cases, not having a practice might be the smarter course of action. Then again, this is also a question of how much trust the coach has in his players as well. Keefe is a relatively new coach. He's finally got 2.5 seasons under his belt because of the pandemic shortened seasons and the bubble and all of that other stuff that went on in the past couple of years. The question is, does he trust this Leafs team enough to get the job done without having to have a practice to go over video and, touch up on the last minute things that these guys should already be doing? So that's the other thing to consider here.
If he couldn't make his point in the first 6 games, I think
Yeah,
seventh game, to me, the seventh game in Stanley Cup playoffs is the game that um is the game that every hockey player dreams about. It's the game that Aaron, you, me, when we're kids, were what are we setting up as the goal, and what's the challenge a kid dreams about when it comes to hockey? Game 7, right?
game
I know
seven,
game 7 Stanley
tied,
Cup final, that's
last minute of
big.
play,
Scoring
overtime.
that overtime goal, right?
Yeah,
I mean, that's what we all dreamt about. That's why I don't think you need a practice, because game 7 is about winning, and now you've learned as much as you can learn from your coach, your general manager. The coach, the key thing that he needs to concentrate on is who he puts in the lineup, right? That's where his affected. How he runs practice, to me, is going to be irrelevant. It's who he puts in the lineup. And I don't know that he will surprise anybody, because he's not the kind of guy that surprises people. You know what I'm saying? I'm not saying that in a bad way. Just he doesn't strike me as a guy who would go, you know what? I think I'm going to put my fighter in, 15 minutes before the game. You know what I'm saying? Like, make that lineup change. But, he might, just to prove he's different.
I'm gonna put Simmons on a line with
I think the
Spezza.
lineup is going to be the biggest surprise before the game.
I'd be interested to see who he goes with. I mean, you can take a look at practice and get a relatively decent idea of who's going to be going in for the Leafs. But if
Who are
he
they
changes
saying?
everything up,
Who are they saying? Who are the lines to practice?
so the lines in practice were obviously Bunting, Matthews, Marner, Mikheyev,
Well, that's
Tavares,
not obvious,
Kerfoot.
right? Because Kerfoot was there too. So go ahead.
Well, Mikheyev, Tavares, Kerfoot. Then you've got Nylander, Kampf, and Engvall, and then Spezza, Blackwell, and Kasha. So
I still think they should. Well, I guess the way the penalties are being called, and if you're the Leafs, you don't want to tempt penalty calls. That's probably the reason why he isn't dressing his tough guys.
I want Simmons, Clifford, and Spezza on the third line.
See, that's what I'm thinking too.
I want that so badly. You know what? If you win, it's gonna be your top 6 that are gonna be bringing the game home for you. If you lose,
you get the last change.
yeah. So hey, if they throw out Kucherov and Palat and Stamkos, you throw out Spezza, Simmons, and Clifford, and just have them confetti gloves. Just do it. Just do it.
You're thinking like me. I think that's something that I would do in his position.
Just establish the tone right off the top. We're going, boys.
Well, the physical play that the Leafs brought in game 1 was the biggest reason why, they succeeded. And the reason I say it's the reason they succeeded is because when they get those kinds of penalties, the penalty killing is a lot sharper, and the power play is a little angrier. You follow what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, I again, if nobody's figured it out yet, I think hockey's a very mental game. And I don't mean crazy. I just mean cerebral. That's the way you say that word, right?
There are layers to every single coaching decision that is made. You have to recognize putting in player X will unfortunately mean player Y has to be held out of the lineup. Hey, can Clifford play defense? Because, if you wanted to put a few extra fists on the back end to clear the front of the net.
The time, Aaron, we just finished saying that they spent 6 games in a season figuring out who they are and what they need to do, and now you're going to throw a monkey wrench into the middle of the fix?
I think it would be
What's
brilliant.
What's the matter with you?
I like to live dangerously.
Definitely. Well, he doesn't have the name Meathead for nothing. I got to tell you.
I earned it.
Jeez. That was a head shaker, buddy. But you know what? If they did it in one, I'd have to say, well, Aaron, you had it right.
I had maybe I got something here. No, I don't necessarily think I have a future coaching in hockey.
I just think it's going to happen.
No, it won't.
I don't think it's going to happen. But what should happen is, Leaf fans will be glued to their seats, their TVs. There was there were more people at Maple Leaf Square to be expected. Game 7, hopefully, hopefully for Leaf fans, Toronto sports fans, Toronto Maple Leaf hockey fans, Aaron, and others that love the Toronto Maple Leafs to death, that you get at least the satisfaction of winning the first round. Me, I'm going to enjoy covering it. So, yeah, I'm pulling for the Leafs too, because I don't want to talk about the Bruins.
Well,
And I
they
don't
still
want
have to beat Carolina. So
and I don't want to talk about Montreal. They're easy to talk about. Oh, they're World Day Stanley Cup champion. Well, not in the last 20 years, though. I wouldn't mind talking about Edmonton, Calgary. I love Calgary. I think we haven't said a word about them. They're ahead in their series. Edmonton, Calgary like Toronto, but Calgary's done it where they sit right now. They're on a roll. Calgary.
Now, I had the opportunity to speak with a Dallas Stars fan who didn't hold out high hopes for the series. Calgary is currently up 3-2. He fully expects them to close it out in 6. He's been following the Stars since they moved there, so he kind of is up on the ins and outs of the game. And yeah, he's not convinced that the Stars have what it takes to beat Calgary. The problem is they're both two low-scoring, defensively oriented teams.
Yeah, but one of them knows how to do that really well.
Yeah. So there's that part of it. Edmonton has been making things interesting against the Kings. So after having Kane score twice to help the Kings win, they're now finding themselves in a game 7, which is again their Achilles heel as much as it is ours. We don't neither of these teams seem to have much luck when it comes to overtime. So
And goaltending there is an issue. It's been an issue here, not as much in this playoff series, one game. But
no, that's
goaltending.
True,
goaltending. Markstrom hasn't been that stupendous either. He's not been as good as I think he can be.
No.
So he's got a good game in his future, I think.
He definitely does, but I'm more concerned with Edmonton at this point, and Mike Smith is basically in the last minute of his career. So, he's really got to get something done as a 40-year-old. He's been playing spectacularly, but in the short amount of time that he has left, I don't know if he can pull it off.
Well, I hope he does. Because I'm looking forward to the Battle of Alberta. The only thing better than the Battle of Alberta was a revisiting of last year's first round for Toronto.
Yeah, no, I'm going to have to kind of agree with you on that one.
So it's great for hockey fans and Alberta hockey fans. That'd be just awesome, that series. And you would be having Smash Mouth meets Goal Scorer.
Edmonton. Well, I'm definitely looking forward to that. We'll have to see how it all pans out.
Not talk about it on Monday. Turns out. Oh, and yesterday, only a few seconds. And yesterday, both McDavid, and Draisaitl were hurt in the game. I hope they're okay.
They should be.
That's scary. That's scary stuff. That really is scary stuff.
Well, hopefully they'll be good to go come the next game. So,
yeah, absolutely. We hope, right?
Yep.
Okay. You know what? I'm tired. I don't want to do the close. You can watch this stuff on Spanglish Nose Road. This has been Leaf Talk. Really tired. Long day last night. Long day. Good luck, Leaf fans. Hope you get your wish, and we get to keep doing Leaf Talk because it's a lot of fun doing this with Aaron. I always appreciate your contribution.
Appreciate that, Frank.
Thanks, buddy.